Greetings. My name is Louise Dente, and I welcome you to yet another edition of Cultural Caravan. On this edition is a special as we're joined by the Assistant President General of the UNIA, Mr. Raymond Dugue. Welcome to Cultural Caravan.
Thank you. Welcome. And I thank you for having me on, Sister Louise. It's always a pleasure to support you in your efforts and what you do for our community. So we honor you.
Well, we thank you so much. And we certainly admire the work that you and the President General, Michael Duncan, have been doing for years in terms of uplifting our people and really uplifting the legacy of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and the Honorable Carlos Cooks. And so I just wanted to start there because unlike the Honorable Marcus Garvey, not too many people know about the work of the Honorable Carlos Cooks and him being, as you said, the successor to the legacy of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. So we just wanted to spend a little time on that because I think in all the things he did, because a lot of things we take for granted that we sometimes people attribute to other leaders were really came directly from him. So, and I know that you have a wonderful presentation that focuses on that. So let's get started. Who was he? Let's start for those who've been on the planet in the moon. Who was Carlos Cooks?
The Honorable Carlos A. Cooks was born in San Pedro de Macorís on June 23rd, 1913. San Pedro de Macorís is in the Dominican Republic. It's on the eastern side. Santo Domingo, let's say, is in central south. And so you want to keep going east towards the direction of Puerto Rico. So you'll reach San Pedro de Macorís. San Pedro de Macorís has a lot of features. There are a lot of plantations, a lot of sugarcane, a lot of pineapple. But more importantly, it's got a lot of Black folks. So, you know, you get the feeling what was going on. His parents, James and Alice, were from St. Martin. They moved into the Dominican Republic like 1898, believe it or not. The point is, who is Carlos A. Cooks? He is, for the lack of a better term, the ideological son of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. From the time Mr. Garvey passed away, we're talking June 10, 1940, until Mr. Cooks passed away, May 5th, 1966. You're talking over 25 years, actually 26 years, but a quarter of a century. Carlos Cooks was the ideological son of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. He single-handedly continued the work of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Whenever you see the term "buy Black," that's Carlos Cooks. He flew the red, black, and green everywhere, all over Harlem. He was the, what's the word? He was the fabric of Harlem. And you know, for example, 1935 in October, Italy invades Ethiopia. You know, Cooks is really thinking international. He says, you know what? If Italy can do that to Ethiopia, and all the Italian businesses in Harlem, they flew their Italian flags. So he said, get a load of that. So he encouraged the community. We don't have to physically assault anybody. We don't have to chase them. All we have to do, buy Black, support your own merchants, build your community. And it was because of that, the impetus of the invasion of Ethiopia, that Cooks generated that nationalistic fervor. And the Italian Iceman was taken away from Harlem. Our mission is simple. It's the redemption of Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. It's very vast, but it implies building your community. It implies coming together. So Cooks was the youngest knight, the youngest captain in the African Legions at 19 years old. The African Legion was the paramilitary militia, the armed wing of the UNIA. And if you ever look at the Fruit of Islam from the Nation of Islam, you see their colors. Okay, it's identical to African Legions, identical. The only difference is African Legions and UNIA started before the Nation of Islam and the Fruit of Islam. What else did Cooks do? You know, talking about natural hairstyles, oh my God. Cooks He didn't create this, but he borrowed it from Mr. Garvey, the Miss Natural Standard of Beauty. He actually connected natural hairstyles with upliftment, with understanding your true African self. And then Cooks was the one who started the Marcus Garvey annual parade in Harlem in 1942. The thing about Cooks, Sister Louise, he never promoted himself. Never. All he ever wanted to do was promote Mr. Garvey, promote one God, one aim, one destiny, promote race first, promote redemption of Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. So, and then one other thing that Cooks did, that he never stopped discussing by Black. He never, he created what you call, you know, he left it, and I have to say this, he was UNIA, but he left the UNIA after Mr. Garvey passed away because he saw the steady demise of the organization. He created the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement, ANPM, but it's identical to UNIA, everything, the colors, the mission, the statement, everything. And then the other thing you have to understand, he built an international relationship. For example, Patrice Lumumba from the Congo, that was his personal friend. He got to know Kwame Nkrumah, but the one he was closest with was Dr. Sam Nujoma of Southwest Africa, which should be named, and it is, Namibia. All of this. And what he did was he connected Africa to us. Like we always say about Mr. Garvey. Mr. Garvey didn't bring us to Africa. He brought Africa to us. Well, Carlos Cook cemented it. So all of that, as I said, the Red, Black, and Green, the African Nationalist Legion, and then, being that, oh, by the way, Carlos Cooks did serve in the U.S. military from April of 1943 until March of 1946 during World War II. And then lastly, I have to say this. It was Carlos Cooks who designated August 17th, that's the birth of the prophet, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, as the first Black holiday, official or unofficial. So in the UNIA, we call August 17th the holiest day of obligation. But it was Cooks in 1942 who said, no, this is a Black holiday. 1954, Carlos Cooks organizes School of African Culture. And get this, he's teaching us, this is 1954, he's teaching us Kiswahili. Now, Sister Louise, I doubt very few of our people even heard of Kiswahili, even knew what part of Africa Kiswahili was spoken, or even cared about Africa. That this is 54. I mean, just think about it. Malcolm hasn't even come to Harlem yet. Malcolm doesn't get to Harlem until June of 1954. As of February 1954, Cooks has already organized a cadre. So for all of those reasons, we honor, respect, and last month in June, we celebrated his birth. That was June 23rd. He would have been 110 years old. Mm-hmm. And starting next year, Sister Louise, and I know you'll be there with me next year, videotaping this, we will visit the gravesite of Carlos Alexander Cooks. We found it. It's in the Long Island National Cemetery. It's one of the national cemeteries for U.S. military servicemen, and he's in section 2D, site 231. I've been there. I have pictures, and so starting next year in 2024, June 23rd, we will be at the Long Island National Cemetery honoring. And let me finalize this. The reason why we have to continue to canonize, to respect, to honor, and to revere our leaders. Well, if we don't honor them, who is going to? Can we expect our enemies and our oppressors to do that? In fact, our enemies and our oppressors will only give heroes that serve their purpose, so-called heroes. So we've got to canonize and honor our own saints. So June 23rd, 2024, Sister Louise, you've got an invitation right next to me as I will be discussing the Honorable Carlos A. Cooks.
You shared so much about the Honorable Carlos Cooks, the Black. I mean, you see, particularly around Kwanzaa time, around now we have Juneteenth and other, Black. And now, we have some other things. So Black has become synonymous with supporting our businesses, which we need to do more of. And then when you think of some of the other things in terms of, validating our beauty, of validating our community, and also the respect, okay? Respect, self-respect. So Carlos Cooks is one of those silent heroes, but as you said, he was a man who was very in the background, but he took care of business. And that's really what he was about. And as you know, we all know recently in Harlem, Upper Harlem, the community that actually honored him with a street naming, honoring in the Carlos Cook. Is it Carlos Cook's Way or what?
Carlos Cook's Way. It's West 166th Street and Broadway. That was May of 2021. A lot of dignitaries were there,
Wow.
and it was nice to finally acknowledge Carlos Cooks. And Sister Louise, I really have to add, 1959, Carlos Cooks calls for convention. In that convention, he makes a profound statement, but it's scientific, where he argues we should no longer use the term Negro. He says, your name identifies where you're from. If you're born in Italy, they call you Italian. If your roots are from Italy, they call you Italian. If your roots are from Ethiopia, they call you Ethiopian. He says Negro has no connotation, has no direct connection. But more importantly, and here's the scientific part, he says, you know what? We have to call ourselves African or Black. They're synonymous. And he says the reason why is it's not just color. We're not, white individuals painted black. He says, no. Far from that. Your color, your genetic makeup is your history and your experience. It's what the evolutionary changes our what do you call that? Humanoids, what Homo sapiens that had to make to survive where we're originally from, Africa. And so it's not, we can't take it lightly, and it's scientific. So Carlos Cooks was way ahead of his time.
With that said, I now want to move into what's going on in UNIA. UNIA has been busy. Talk to us about what's new with the UNIA, what's going on the continent, Liberty Farms, and other stuff.
Okay, let me give you an update. First, I'm going to plug in for August 17th. That's Thursday, August 17th, 2023. It's the annual Marcus Mosiah Garvey annual parade that was started by Carlos Cook. So please come out. We assemble at 5, we march, and at 6, and then after the parade, we have our celebration with the keynote speaker, the Honorable Michael R. Duncan, the current President General. Let's talk about Africa, Liberia. We're in Liberia frequently. In fact, the President General spends more time in Liberia than he does in New York. And why are we in Africa? Well, for 3 very good reasons. Number one, this is where Mr. Garvey wanted us to build our beachhead, in Liberia. And the reason why Mr. Garvey wanted Liberia is because that was the purpose of the creation of Liberia. The motto is the love of liberty brought us here. It was a haven created for Black men and Black women to leave North America, leave slavery, and then go back. So 1822, that's when the settlers, so-called settlers, first arrived. 2022 was 200th anniversary. 1847, it finally became independent. Now, independent from what? Well, independent from the ACS, the American Colonization Society. So even though it wasn't colonized per se, but it was. Okay, so that's the number one reason why we're in Liberia. Number 2 is we have a government right now that is friendly to us, that wants to work with us, mostly because the leadership of the Republic of Liberia is related to the President General. So we're going to take full advantage of that. And now the third reason, all over Africa, Sister Louise, it's the most fertile place on the planet. You're talking about 12 million square miles. It's 12 million square miles of holy land. Liberia, get this, Sister Louise, all you have to do, take any vegetable, any seeds, throw it on the floor, and it grows. It's unbelievable. How do we know that? Well, Firestone told us that. when they built their whole rubber industry, a rubber empire in Liberia. And by the way, that rubber plantation that Firestone got, that was land that Mr. Garvey had offered to purchase. But England, France, and Spain and US connived to prevent Mr. Garvey from building his beachhead and his headquarters there. But anyway, everything grows in Liberia. So what are we doing? Let me say this, Sister Louise. You know, there are three segments of society, three segments of the economy. There's agriculture and farming, manufacturing and contracting, and services. Services are for highly developed societies. But for you to build any nation, you have to start with agriculture and farming. In fact, this is the only way you can eradicate poverty. Everybody on the planet knows this. Well, except us, they make sure we don't know it. But in Africa, in general, but especially Liberia, I've already told you everything grows there. In spite of that, 85% of all the food is imported. I mean, there's a disconnect here. If everything grows there, it's the most fertile place on the planet, then why is 85% of all the food being imported? Aha. Well, we call that neocolonialism. We call that continuing the dependency, continuing the domination. So you're always dependent. So, for example, rice. Rice is the main staple in Liberia. You would not believe it. It's not grown in Liberia. Even though Liberia is known as what do you call that? As the rice coast. This is amazing. Anyway, well, it's actually known as the pepper coast and the rice coast. This is from time immemorial. So anyway, so what are we doing? Well, get this. We have the rock, and most of our foods we purchase from other places. A lot of it comes from the Caribbean, especially Jamaica, but we actually don't make any of the food. We import the food and we distribute it and we sell it. So one of us had this really good idea. Why don't we grow our own food? And then another one said, where should we build? Where should we build this farm? Ding, 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 ding. We're in Liberia. We have a connection. So why don't we do that? So that's how it all evolved. And then get this. While we're building the farm, while we're doing that, you know, there's a whole bunch of communities around us. And a lot of the children, you know, it's not, I mean, let's be honest, what goes on in Africa. And I can talk about this, especially Liberia. What goes on, education is really babysitting. Do you know why? Because if there are no industries, why do you need to educate anybody? See, you know, when you have industries, you send people to train to handle the industries. But if there are no industries, if everything is imported, if everything is Chinese made, you know, what do you need industries for? So because of that, education is not what it should be or what it can be. But anyway, having said that, we're building the farm, and what do we notice? A whole bunch of children that really don't have any occupation, any time. So we have to build a school. So guess what we call the school? The Marcus Garvey Academy. You notice everything about us is Marcus Garvey, Carlos Cooks. Well, that's what to be expected. So what's the latest on Liberty Farm? I was there in February of 2023. Sister Louise, and I've gotten reports in June of 2023, we built a factory on the farm. Now, well, guess what? There's no electricity. So you had to get solar panels. You know what I mean? Everything, you just have to evolve. So we have solar panels. We have chicken coops that hold 500 chickens. We've got 2 industrial wells that we had to dig. But about the factory, what are we doing? You know, let me show you how colonialism works. You get Ivory Coast and Ghana, the 2 places on the planet that creates the most cocoa. And get this, they don't control the price of cocoa. Imagine that. You're creating it, you're harvesting, you're growing it, but you don't control the price because those prices are controlled in Antwerp, in Belgium. And so why we don't control, it's part of the calculus of neocolonialism. So what we realize, it's not just to grow the food. The reason why we built the factory is to manufacture and process it. So for example, we have cassava, that's big. Cassava you eat, But cassava you use for a whole lot of things. Cassava oil. But you also fry the cassava to make what they call bemi. You you make cassava chips. You can make a whole bunch of things with cassava. And that's the trick. That's why we built the factory to convert these vegetables, raw materials, into manufactured goods. And then pineapple, let me tell you, and when I take you to Liberia, which is in February of 2024, you've promised you're coming with me. We're leaving Friday, February 16, 2024. Sister Louise, I absolutely guarantee this. You've never had sweeter pineapples on the planet than what we grow. It's that good.
Just tell me briefly, what has been the response to the people in Liberia to the UNIA's presence?
Let me respond that with this characterization. We went to a school in February when I was there, and the two books that we've discussed in your show, and I thank you very much for that. The Black Skin is a Badge of Honor, and Tell Me About the UNIA African Alphabet. Now we went to present it to the school, and they were wishy-washy. When we brought something for them to eat, everybody was happy. So what's the moral of the story? Words are good. It's beautiful. They're uplifting. Man does not live by the word of the Lord only. He's got to have bread. So anytime you're feeding people, anytime you're not occupying the bad way, anytime you present occupation, who wouldn't love it? So what's been the response? Let me tell you, they call me Uncle Raymond. I'm their uncle everywhere I go in Liberia. So I'm an official uncle because, and it's nice to bring upliftment and positivity, but you got to feed people. You got to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let me say this, as evil as these missionaries were, and they're evil for what they did, but they created occupation for people. They brought gifts, to fool our people. I get it, but they didn't come empty-handed.
Absolutely.
So words are nice, but they're empty. So what's been the reception? Well, everywhere I go, they call me Uncle Raymond. So, and it's not because I look like that, because we're related. Well, we're all Black, but because we're bringing
absolutely
food, we're bringing occupation.
Brother Raymond, mark my word, you're going to have some marker. There's going to be something there, Uncle Raymond's something there, because I know that you're leaving an impact, you and PG, in terms of those children and those families, because I remember seeing pictures of those kids that I understand they used to follow around, and now they're in the schools and being educated. So you guys have been like a godsend to our families, our extended family there.
And then, you know what, let me add this. I forgot to mention this. What else is the UNI doing? We partnered with the Claw Hope Foundation. You were there in 2018 in New York. Let me tell you, it's a whole city. We call it the City of Hope. And it's going to house, it has dormitories, it has a movie theater, it has a basketball court. You will have, Sister Louise, in fact, when I take you to Liberia, you may not want to come back. You better tell your listeners, your faithful watchers, that you may not come back. But anyway, listen to this. So in partnering with the school, we've pledged our support. We're asking our members to support a child as low as $25 a month. But that's secondary. Guess what? They're building a museum on campus. And guess who? The administration of the Claw of the City of Hope. Guess who they asked to build a museum?
Let me guess. The one.
Okay, I don't have to tell you what's going to be in that museum. Okay,
I know.
We'll go over this. We will start from the beginning. The 6 species of humankind, and then talk about Africa. Talk about genetics, but then get to Africa. So, Sister Louise, I will share those pictures and images with you. You have to see it. It was nothing. Now to see a city, they call it the City of Hope.
Well, just so people know, Clara is the president's wife. She set up this foundation to
Yeah,
support the
Claude,
family.
Claude Ware, the First
Claire
Lady, the
Ware.
Honorable Claude Ware, the First
Yes.
Lady of the Republic of Liberia. And I believe you interviewed her in
Yes, I
2018.
did. We did. It was an
Yeah,
award-winning interview.
yes.
But yes, I'm very excited about that. So yes, we do have to get to the continent. So I just want to, first of all, as I have done, salute and commend you, the President General, and all the members of the UNIA for the work, the dedication, the fulfillment of Garvey's vision. A lot of people can talk Garvey, but actually doing the work of Garvey, seeing his vision, his mission. And as I said, you guys are like the Cubs that he talked about. Look for me in the whirlwind. Well, I think that the Cubs are here and are actually doing the work of Garvey, and that's what he saw. So he knew he had his role was to set the pace, but the people that he's impacted is tremendous. So again, just in closing, is there a number or a website that you like to share for anyone who wants more information?
With pleasure. With pleasure. My number, you can call me 24/7, is 718-570-7350. Again, 718-570-7350. Our website is www.unia-acl-government.com. Again, www.unia-acl-government.com. And in closing, Sister Louise, I want to thank you because it was you who first inspired me to write a book. When you said, when is the book coming out? Well, guess what? We did 2 books. We have 3 more coming out.
Oh,
It's
wow.
the UNIA primer on Kemet.
Oh,
and then
goodness.
Dessalines. I have to respect our dear brother Dessalines. So that's 2 more in the pipeline. So we're hoping to get them out before the end of this year. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And finally, our Math Academy is starting this Saturday, July 15th at the Simotap. That's 13505 Rockaway Boulevard. 13505 Rockaway Boulevard, Simotap, Queens, this Saturday, July 15th, 2023 at 2 p.m. It is open to UNIA members. So if you're not a UNIA member, you got to join, but it's all free. Okay,
Oh,
so I hope to see you there.
That's tremendous. Well, listen, it sounds exciting, and I want to thank you so much for joining us and giving us an update on some of the wonderful work that's been going on. And again, encourage our audience to really connect, and we look forward to more updates. Again, on behalf of Cultural Caravan, I want to sincerely thank you, Brother Raymond, for work you do. Peace and blessings. Take care.